Right. Hello, everyone again. We are just waiting a couple more minutes and we will begin the webinar. All right. Just we give one more minute and then we begin. All right. I think we should start. So, welcome everyone. My name is Martina, and I will be the moderator of the event today. Thank you all for joining, and we are going to cover the following topics today. So, first things first, we are going to discuss what is the EU Digital Product Passport everyone is afraid of and a new big thing coming in. We're going to discuss the context around it as well. Afterwards, we're going to dive deeper into how to assemble all the data for the DPP. And in the end, we will also discuss the opportunities beyond compliance. Also, we will leave some time for the Q&A session. In the end, a quick note, as you can see, this webinar will be recorded and we will send it to all the attendees afterwards. Also, if you would like to share some insights from the webinar, please don't forget to tag the Twintag LinkedIn page. Also, of course, don't forget to follow us. We are sharing lots of interesting information related to the DPP topic and many other ones, and you will see the LinkedIn link right now in the comment section. Thank you, Natalia. So today we are welcoming two wonderful speakers, Paul Carpentier, the founder of Twintag himself, and Ann Lambrecht, the product transparency architect at DataFastlane. Before we dig into this complicated topic of DPP, Paul and Ann, why don't you go through a quick round of introduction, and Ann, would you like to begin first?
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I am indeed active as a freelance consultant, targeting companies in any supply chain to set up data processes to make their products more transparent. So to be able to show how, by whom their products are made. So with sustainability as the main driver. So since a few years, I position myself as a product transparency architect. So I advise companies and I assist them in the implementation of the required processes, and I'm independent of any technology, standards, platform, etc. So I have practical experience of what it takes in terms of organization, internal collaboration, external collaboration, selecting standards, technologies, and bringing the data of those companies into life. So I collaborated with Twintag on several cases where multiple companies were involved to provide data. So we share the same vision and pragmatism on the subject of today, the EU Digital Product Passport, and I'm very happy to co-present on this webinar.
Thank you, Anne. Paul, the floor is yours now.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. My name is Paul Carpentier. I'm one of the two founders of Twintag. My colleague Jan van Riel is in the audience, I believe. This is more or less our sixth startup related all the time to, let's say, deep data technology. Before the turn of the century, believe it or not, we were working on using unique identifiers in technology that today you would call cloud storage. With Twintag, what we have done is we have taken the same idea, the same power of those unique identifiers, but we have taken them up a couple layers up the value stack so that they will show up as tags, as a QR code or an NFC tag on products in order to tie those products to a digital soul in the cloud. And that's what we're really talking about. The Twintag platform is built specifically for doing so. And a specific use case for that, and an interesting one, obviously, is the digital product passport that we will be talking about here today.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Anne. So I suggest we dive into our first section. And Anne, I believe going by your years of experience, when people hear about the terms DPP and SPI, you would be the best person to tell us what is it all about and where does it fit in the bigger picture when it comes to the EU Green Deal.
Okay. Indeed, in the context of the EU Green Deal, several initiatives on future legislations have been announced. All of them have a certain product scope. They can be represented in a schema, as you see on the screen, but a lot of interdependencies exist. So there are a lot of initiatives, and they all have dependence one on another. And product scopes are also overlapping between all those initiatives. The webinar of today will focus on the circular economy, on the Ecodesign Directive, but I still wanted to mention some other initiatives because they are as important to drive digitization of product information as the Ecodesign Directive. For example, the first one, substantiating green claims initiative within the climate action. This initiative aims to avoid greenwashing. So it aims to provide facts about CO2 emissions, farming practices, biodiversity, animal welfare. And all these facts can be assembled digitally and presented to other stakeholders. And when we speak about presenting product information digitally, we speak generally already as of a product passport, a digital product passport. Within the sustainable supply chain, corporate organizations already have regulations in place today for conflict minerals, timber, batteries, upcoming also for forced labor. So they do have to set up due diligence processes and take the necessary risk management actions. But the proposal for corporate sustainability due diligence, which is targeting clothing and footwear, food and agriculture, minerals and metals, will increase the scope of this legislation. So this does impact corporate organizations, more than 250 or 500 employees. But this also has impact on smaller companies, because those corporate organizations, during their due diligence, requests a lot of information to their suppliers or suppliers, which also involves smaller companies. And so those companies also will require more automation of their product information in order to be able to keep up with all the requirements of all their different customer channels. And then to come back to the Ecodesign Directive, this is the subject of today. So the Ecodesign Directive will regulate the design of any product placed in the EU market, so either manufactured or exported into the EU. It is targeting all product groups except food, feed, and pharma, which are already being regulated in other legislations regarding traceability, and so are kept separate of these initiatives. But anyway, so all the messages that we give today apply to any product information related to any of those initiatives. So coming back to the Ecodesign Directive itself, it has as objective to make business models, products, and services more circular. So by improving the design, first of all, the design of the products themselves, improve the processes to make the primary products, improve the processes to reuse in any form, to reuse them, to reduce the final waste, and also to enable business processes which stimulate this circularity. So the directive has two aspects. It has performance requirements and information requirements. Performance requirements are related to the physical product themselves, and information requirements, as the word says, it will give which information has to be provided digitally in order to stimulate this circularity. And so these information requirements, these digital information requirements, are called the EU Digital Product Passport. And they serve all the different types of circularity, as you can see on the screen. So also, this directive targets several product groups. For each product group, a delegated act will be issued, and then the regulation is in place. So by then, it is already a requirement, a legal obligation. So companies should start thinking today of how to prepare for those regulations, but also how to make maximum advantage and competitive advantage, and not only as a compliance tool.
All right. Thank you, Anne. Now we know where does the digital product passport fit on the big picture, but what it actually is and what's its main aim. Paul, could you maybe give us a bit more explanation here?
Sure. And before doing that, actually, I want to say how happy I am with the let's say the very international composition of this webinar, and not just the audience, but also the Twintag team. So as Martina is actually driving this presentation from Ukraine, from beautiful Lviv, and Philip is directing the whole effort from Lithuania, from Vilnius. So well, thank you all. This feels very European indeed. So without further ado, what is the European Digital Product Passport? And if you want to have let's say a clear-cut, very dry definition, you could say it is indeed a structured collection of product-related data, the way it's defined here on the screen. And it's obviously important that we know what we're talking about. So the scope and the let's say the metadata around ownership and access rights are very narrowly defined in order to be able to work together. And in order to tie all this up to the physical products that it is related to, there is a unique identifier. I told you Twintag is totally centered on the use of unique identifiers. We have a platform for that, and so this is our very, involvement with this whole thing. To us, this is business as usual. So how does it work? Well, it works in the only, maybe a previous slide again, if I can. Just touching on the how quickly is. It's the only way in which it can work. It's like the internet. It's decentralized. So imagine a centralized internet would never work. Everyone knows that. And yet there will be central registries, just like there are central DNS registries on the internet in order basically to point into the right direction. But it is going to be decentralized, and that's the essential architecture. And obviously that comes with a whole bunch of advantages. It comes with a number of limitations that you need to take into account. The scope of the digital product passport, the way it's defined right now, because what we can see is we can see this evolving in the future. That's quite clear. But at this time, the focus is on, let's say, on the green stuff, on sustainability, circularity, the reuse, remanufacturing, and recycling. And talking of recycling, that's what you see in action here. So the whole product life cycle is actively concerned with the digital product passport, or the other way around, I should say. And as Anne was already pointing out, it starts with the eco-design. This is not the kind of thing which you can basically tack on afterwards as an afterthought. It needs to be designed in. And so that first step is really important, and that is where it will take some time. We will need to get used to it. But we have seen processes like these being successful in the past. So think of the colored stickers on the household appliances, which you do see in shops. They were not there 25 years ago. And now they are, and they basically tell you what the eco score is of the appliance. So and form new habits, we can basically improve collective processes, and that's what this is about. If you look at the second step, so production. In production, there are many aspects, and already the data can be assembled and even used in that process. But another important aspect there is how to hook up the digital content to the physical object. And that might happen through, say, a QR code and an NFC tag, an RFID tag, which we will see, for example, in the example that we will be talking about, mattresses. So you want to be able to use this at scale. If you want to reduce the pile of mattresses in landfills, then you need to be, let's say, you need productive ways of doing so. Obviously, next thing up, next period in the product lifecycle is the most important one. It's the useful life of the product, where let's say the consumer is going to use the product, and will, in the process of doing so, either or both use information and potentially contribute information to, let's say, to this product passport cloud. We do see, let's say, a lot more than that, a lot more potential. We'll talk about that later. But here, everyone can see how this might happen. Then finally, after the useful life of a product, what we need to do is we need to dispose of that product in the most responsible way possible, and either reuse it, which is still the best, and which is still an underdeveloped area. We can repair it. So there's more and more attention to repair type legislation. And finally, let's say remanufacturing, where you use components of the product. If all those do not apply, then you end up in recycling, which was the last step. Now, if you look at these 6 topics, it's interesting because this is what the EU says are the different purposes of the digital product passport. But when discussing this, Anne was pointing our attention to the fact that, well, look at this. This also defines 6 different sets of stakeholders that are involved. And yes, that is correct. So starting on the top left, if you talk about raw materials, let's say extraction production, it is clear that there is a number of applications there. For example, one of our use cases that we are working with one of our larger customers, ExxonMobil Chemical, is to label bags, serialize in a serialized fashion, label bags of plastic granulates in order to be able to attach both generic information for the class of product as well as very specific information related to that entity, that bag of 25 kilos, which was maybe produced using green certificates for energy or recycled base materials. So that's one thing. Now, second thing is that the manufacturers, they need to know, we talked about it earlier, they need to know in which way they should apply, they should hook up, if you will, the digital information to the physical object. And this relates not only to, let's say, the physical aspects, like is it a sticker, is it an engraving, is it a radio tag, but also, and importantly, how is the formatting and how are the rights and the accessibility of the data associated with the products. So that's an important thing, and that needs to be resolved. And all of those questions need to be answered in order for manufacturers to be able to, let's say, produce effectively. Now, when all of that is happening, then again, during the use of the product and the useful life cycle, as I was mentioning before, an enormous amount of data is going to be produced. So it's very clear that out of this whole initiative, there will be huge data sets, big data sets that are derived, and that will tell us about the life of the product, not just individual products, but let's say global products in their relationship with consumers, and all of that is going to tell us a lot. It is going to provide information for market surveillance authorities, so it is going to be a lot easier to keep track of what is happening, because the information will be contained in the product itself. So no longer will you need to work on samples or on polls in order to get some feel for a given market. No, you will be able to use the actual raw data, all of it. This is the importance of this cannot be overestimated. Then obviously, subsets of that will be made available to public authorities and policymakers because they have been setting out the original legislation and they want to see in which way it is respected. And it is my hunch that if this works the way we see all these projects work with Twintag, because we've done all these steps in the context of other products, you will see very unexpected results. And that is going to be very important to those policymakers. They will be able to actually drive the future versions of this whole initiative from actual data from the use. Last but not least, who is a very important stakeholder here, that is the citizens. So it's not those might be the same people of the just above that, the users, but the citizens at large. People have every right to know how well governments and authorities are, let's say, maintaining the or respecting the legislation that they themselves have called into life. So, and the information that is compiled will obviously be able to be extracted and delivered to those citizens.
All right. Thank you, Paul, for such a brief explanation. You've mentioned that that enormous amount of data will be produced. So maybe, and now you can explain how to assemble all this data for the digital product passport.
Okay. So when up to now we have always looked at it from a full supply chain, but no company has the control on a full supply chain. So let's take the viewpoint now of one company putting products on the market and how to attack this new regulation. So it puts products on the market, and the regulation will impose some track and trace information. So information upstream from where the materials, the components of those products come from. It will also impose information on how to promote circularity and some compliance information. So the data that a company needs in this digital product passport originates in the supply chain, not only in the company itself, but also in other companies. So the question arises how to assemble all this. So this is the subject of this session. So the first message is here. It's a whole journey to set up those data processes. It's, in fact, these are new processes on top of all the existing processes a company already knows. So it's really worthwhile not to tackle this new regulation purely as a compliance tool, but to think how to take business opportunity out of it. So think of how can this tool enable new communication and collaboration channels between stakeholders in the supply chain? How can it differentiate my products in terms of sustainability, circularity, how to drive sustainability as a whole by connecting people in the supply chain which were not connected anymore. So think of it making a long supply chain as transparent as a very direct short chain product. So Paul will elaborate more on this later on in the webinar, but it's really important to look for this business value in this digital journey. What is also important, can you go back? Yeah, can you? What is also important is that a lot of collaboration will be required. So as in any project or in any journey, one has to identify the initial use case, the MVP. But here also there is the dimension that we will have to collaborate with other companies. And with the MVP comes an MVE, a minimum viable environment, so a minimal community with whom you can make agreements. And you will have to make agreements on financial level, business level, data level, IT level. But please keep in mind that any company, so the world is more complex than a linear supply chain. Any company works in many different supply chains, many different ecosystems. So whenever you start a project, don't think that you make agreements for the whole world or that you need global standards. The subject is not as simple as this, but start with a minimum viable ecosystem, a minimal community, and then gradually you can extend the functionality, but also the community of the initiative. So diving into the data sharing steps itself. So assume we have an MVP, MVE. There are 3 steps or 3 in this data assembly. First of all, and this looks obvious, but it is not that simple either. Try already to make a digital product passport with data from your own organization. It looks simple. The data, they originate and reside in your ERP systems, your data warehouses. You have documents somewhere assembled, certificates, movies, pictures, marketing material, specification documents. But setting up the processes to assemble this in some cloud platform and be able to provide those data in a consistent daily matter is already a huge effort. there are some experience on this. For example, in the food sector, so food companies already have to provide in a digital way nutrient and allergen information when their food product is sold digitally. So providing the same information as is printed on the label. So this requirement is in place since a few years, and an audit has been made last year on the quality of the information provided, and only 11% of the Belgian products passed the audit. So it's a cumbersome process. It will take time. So it's better to start now when there is no pressure yet, looking at your own product passports with the data available to you and setting up the necessary organization, data quality organization, to gradually improve the consistency of those data. A next step is integrate data from other parties in your ecosystem. So you collaborate with some other companies. There also we have experience. A few years ago, there was the blockchain hype, and several companies tried to set up platforms to make their products transparent with or without blockchain. Most of these initiatives stranded on very simple cases, very simple supply chains with few participants, because what we saw is that there is a lack of standards, global standards, and also not enough maturity on the platform level. So when you take an MVP, MVE which is sufficiently small, there you can agree practical data standards in your community. Also select some central platform and start experiencing your use case in the market. Maybe we can, regarding those standards, when we speak about data standards in general, there are like 3 types of standards that you can distinguish. There are data identification standards that provide a unique ID for a country, a product, a site, a logistical unit. So there are organizations that issue those standards. So GS1, for example, is the major organization that issues standards of this type, and is very active in retail, FMCG, international logistics. So the problem of those standards is they do exist, but they are not propagated along the full supply chain. So a lot of work still has to be done to define standards along the whole supply chain. But there the message is, there is, for example, there is not only GS1. In agriculture, there are also already standards in place. In the meat supply chain, there are standards in place. Just take those that are already known by the organizations, and later on it will be very easy to switch to another standard if one is prevailing. The second type of standard are data capture standards. That's the way how to scan it from the physical world to capture a digital ID. We all know the barcodes in the supermarkets. There are RFID standards. We all know QR codes now. There are other ones. So there also, briefly look at the list of available standards, and it will be obvious which one to select in your case. And then the third type of standard are data sharing standards. So there is a lot of experience in the world, especially for the first one, EDI standards, where we exchange business transaction data, invoices, orders, delivery notes. So there also we know that it takes a lot of time for a whole large community to adapt all the same standards. But there are other standards already available. As you have the EDI for business transaction data, there is also EPCIS, also issued by GS1 for traceability data. New standards are coming up for circular, for example, the circular product data protocol. Standards are coming up, but for an initial use case, don't spend too much time in adopting all of them. Try to remain pragmatic. So coming back to the previous slides, that was something on data standards. So really integrating data with data standards into a logical database is not simple. But there is a third way to assemble data. If you make sure that your product passport, your digital product passport, is accessible on the web by a URL, and you make sure that somehow this URL can be accessed by external parties with whom you don't have a direct business relationship, then this becomes the basis of a decentral infrastructure. So you have your own product passports of your parts of your supply chain, but you can link it to other product passports, components of your products, of materials of your products. And you can also provide a link of your product passport to the parties coming after you, and they can access your product passport via those unique links. So there are also standards are coming up for those unique links. GS1, again, is active in this domain. And Twintag is a platform that is entirely based on unique identifiers accessing digital information. So the base components to start are all there. Regarding, so that was in a nutshell, how to attack that data assembly.
All right. Thank you, Anne. I believe right now it's a perfect timing for a little recap when it comes to the digital product passport. So from what we understood, it's an information requirement within the European Ecodesign Directive, and it sets out rules and guidelines on how and on what information businesses should share about their products, and that information must be verifiable by the consumers, by the authorities, and by the both businesses themselves. And it must be, of course, available in the digital format. Speaking about the digital format, I believe you, Paul, have a lot of experience with that, and perhaps you can answer the main question: how to get started with a digital product passport, and what's the best way to implement it?
Okay, well, thank you. So looking at the slide, we have our work cut out for us. But let's say prior to starting this, there's a step 0 that I would like to draw your attention to. So, and it's exactly what Anne told you about. I almost don't dare to say how long Anne and I go back in working together, but it was like somewhere 35 years ago. So I'm very well placed to know that she has an extreme amount of experience in a number of the processes that she just mentioned in the slides before. Specifically, say things like data grooming. It will not be the first company that thinks that they do have consistent data in their ERP, and then when they start to look at it, come to the conclusion that it needs, let's say, major cleanup before it actually can be used in processes like these. So a warning, start this early. That means that effort needs at least to be scoped before you can start here. Now, fortunately, the Twintag technology was built for change. So yes, you can start, but the data cleaning effort is going to be important. So if we're just looking sequentially, which is the easiest way of doing it, sourcing the information obviously is essential, and sourcing the information as the product is sourced is the logical step to do, step to make. I was briefly mentioning the plastic granulate before. Well, okay, that may carry information which will be used in the next step, manufacturing. There's a whole number of parameters that go with plastic, different kinds of plastic, and that are required by the machinery that does the manufacturing. And that obviously that is important to see, and that means the smoother you make that transition, the more automated you can make that data flow, the less errors you're going to make, and the higher the quality of the product, at the same time, while being, let's say, produced according to the EU directives. So economy and ecology go hand in hand here if you do it properly. Packaging obviously has a big role to play, because essentially what the tags can do. So we're speaking of twin tags, for example. Those are tags that point to the digital twin in the cloud, and they when they're placed on the packaging, they can actually make that packaging transparent, and they can help you in driving the processes that are associated with it. Namely, for example, the transport and logistics. So those are really important. It's very useful to be able to check and double check where your information is going, where your products are going, and obviously the information with it. Finally, when it's let's say in the sales area, in the retail area, both the packaging and the product itself may play a major role, and that role will actually start to be deployed in retail, and it will transparently or smoothly, seamlessly evolve into the consumer experience in the store and afterwards at home. That means the consumer, and that is the hypothesis on which Twintag is built. We do believe in a future where every product will consist of a physical presence and a digital part. Just like any shop today does have its own web presence, even if it's just a flower shop on the corner. Consumers expected to have a web presence to at least find their opening hours and their phone numbers. Well, every product will have one. Simple one, complicated one, doesn't matter. It will evolve over time, but it will be there. And that's what the consumer's expectation will be. The digital product passport is an excellent moment to start driving that journey. And it may work in both ways. That means companies that haven't done anything so far can say, okay, let's start with the digital product passport, and then afterwards gradually add other elements that are more related to user experience, to serviceability, to upselling, things of that nature. On the other hand, our customers that have been using our technology for 2 or 3 years will be in an exquisite position to incorporate the digital product passport functionality, because they already have the tags on the products, they already have unique identifiers, and the digital product passport amounts to a number of additional parameters and procedures that they need to take care of. But that is what our platform is built for. Finally, on those consumer products, it will be a lot easier, more economical, and higher quality experience to deliver services, both by the manufacturer and by third parties. Eventually, in the whole cradle to grave type of reasoning, the digital product passport will actively help in the recycling and disposal, and that is seamlessly what we will be describing in the, let's say, short use case after this. So if you look at this, this is about a product which is present in each and every home of all the attendees, and it's a product we don't think about too much, except when it doesn't work, and that's a mattress. And mattresses obviously are at the same time they're a typical, let's say, product of a 20th and 21st century civilization. they tend to be shifted, let's say, on a fairly frequent basis. What the manufacturers will tell you, every 5 to 10 years you should change your mattress. But these are products that tend to be built in a very, let's say, different way. That means you have all kinds of technologies, sleeping technologies, and I'm sure you've all seen them. You have foam mattresses, you have all kinds of plastics that are being used. Sometimes you have springs, contain box springs, etc., etc. And all of these have their own characteristics in terms of end-of-life requirements. So how do we go about this? And at Twintag, we have the habit of not just looking, let's say, surgically at things like, okay, this is a separate functionality, this is the digital product passport, and this is something else. No, we're looking at the whole picture. And what we are doing is, in the very beginning, we're looking at, let's say, the different stakeholders and what they're interested in. And this might actually be shown like what we're seeing here. These are from the same tag, on the same product, from the same digital product passport, plus, I should say, the user experiences. And on the left-hand side, you see something that you might actually see more and more of in the future. This is what a typical digital product passport experience will look like to the end user. It's pretty dry, gives you a number of parameters which are important and probably legally prescribed. And that's fine, because it will allow you to compare those parameters between products in the store as provided for by the EU. The second one basically describes, for a given specific mattress, it will describe its manufacturing history with the data, with potentially the eco information, like certificates from blockchain, certificates for the use of green energy, certificates for the use of at least 50% recycled materials, etc., etc. And the manufacturing history with all of the accompanying information can be brought to life simply by, scanning the QR code or the NFC on a mattress. Last but not least, here you see, let's say, a more logistics-oriented viewpoint where it's the mattress or the packaging of the mattress which carries a tag, which makes visible the travel information and let's say the way the product is being shipped. So all of these have, let's say, very different characteristics. They have different stakeholders. They may happen at different points during the discussion, during the product lifecycle, I mean, and it is something which will be expanding. That means each of those can be a starting point, but there is no telling where it will end. And that is the importance of having a platform. This is not just let's say, a simple requirement that you basically analyze and implement and go with henceforth. No, this is just a starting point. And there is a lot of benefits, marketing, economic, customer experience benefits to be had from a proper implementation. And in that sense, we look at the digital product passport as an interesting phenomenon, and obviously it is driving the urgency where people are interested in this, but it's by no means the only one, and we have been doing this for quite a while, and so we're welcoming the fact that digital product passport at least standardizes some of the parameters that basically will be traveling initially with the most concerned products. Mattresses are part of the first group of products that is very specifically targeted because of their, let's say, very problematic constitution for recycling. And I was talking earlier about those tags. You need a technology which is capable of dealing with many different types of tags, and often many at the same time. For mattresses, if you want to be able to scan a pile of mattresses in a landfill, you need RFIDs. So you basically pass along the pile and your smartphone will actually scan RFIDs from 5 meters away. And that is essential for the productivity of that process. At the same time, that same identifier might be on a QR code, which basically is telling the consumer what he or she should do with the mattress. Things like you have to turn it over every 2 months, etc., etc. So those aspects are not new to us. This is a let's say a typical day in the life of what we call product-led communication. The fact that we're hooking up digital souls to physical products, and the digital product passport obviously is a really nice example of that type of functionality.
All right. Thank you, Paul. I am sure that all of our attendees now have a very brief idea of what is DPP and all about it. That's actually it from our side today. Again, thank you, Anne. Thank you, Paul, for such a wonderful discussion. And now we would like to open the floor for some questions. You can either text them in the chat, you can turn on your camera and speak, or not turn on your camera and speak, whatever you prefer. So yeah, the floor is yours for some questions. Okay. I don't see.
Okay, I'm looking at Erik Moerkerken's question, and I don't think you're jumping the gun. I think it's a very, let's say, it's a very valid and down-to-earth question. So who's responsible? I do think because let's say, and that is an assumption. Huh? So you know all the basically the waivers around assumptions, but that it can difficultly be anything else. Is that the manufacturer of a final good is going to be responsible, which does not mean that that manufacturer cannot outsource that responsibility to a third party or use a third party like Twintag to perform certain functions in order to provide the total solution. So in that sense, that manufacturer will be covered by an SLA which they have with Twintag on that total solution. But there will be work, some cases more than others, in areas such as the one that I mentioned already, the cleaning of data and the eventual target. So that's my point. Erik, do you want to? Is there anything else? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I can see a lot of crossover and spin-off topics in terms of usability. How do you present this to the users? It has an overlap with business process optimization, of course, and of course on the data side, there's a lot of opportunity there as well. And it's all and Twintag seems like a platform that is an enabler for all those areas. So it was interesting to see this angle and to see that play out.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, perfect. Does anyone else have questions? All right. In case you do have any questions after the webinar, feel free to shoot us an email at info@twintag.com. You can see it in the bottom of the screen. That's it from our side today. Thank you so much for joining. Please don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn. We will be sharing lots of information about the upcoming events and webinars. And thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And I very much hope to see you soon. The recording will be sent after the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a nice afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.